Hey, what's up guys? It's Cloud Tourist, and today we're going to take a look at some kick processing, at least how I do a lot of processing on my kick. So basically I just took a kick sample that I have that I got from a free pack, I think actually from AK9's pack, which you can get from his Facebook page. I just loaded that in, and then I just took that and did what I usually do to my kicks in my songs, and I'll show you what I did there, and I think it sounds a little bit better, although admittedly the sample is very good, so you'll probably see an even bigger difference if you do these same things on a sample that is not as good. But always when you're doing drums, especially kick and snare, things like that, you're going to want to start out with the best possible sample you can, because that's how you're going to get a really good result. But just for making the sample that much better, you need to do the right kind of processing. So I'll show you, this is what the kick sounds like originally. And then after I do some stuff to it, it sounds like this. So you'll notice, I think, just a little bit more punch, that kind of thing. I'll play it again. This is without any of the processing. And this is with the processing. So what I did is I first took a channel EQ, and I found that if you just boost the low end a little bit, it gives your kick more of a heavy feel to it. So that kind of brings out more of the low end. And some of you might be going, oh, it's going to conflict with the sub. Well, obviously when you're working within the mix, you're going to want to cut that, and I actually did that with a low cut that I put on afterwards. I cut it at about 30 just to cut really low frequencies. You could do it a little bit higher than that if you're having trouble in your mix down with the sub and the kick conflicting. But there's other ways you can work around that as well, so that's not really an issue for this tutorial, because I'm just looking at kind of the processing. So I did that. I boosted that a little bit. I thought the sample was a little bit harsh on the high end, so I took that down half a decibel. When you're doing it within the mix, it might actually sound better with a little bit harsher high end, because it'll come through more, it'll penetrate more through the mix. But other than that, EQ, not a lot. I usually like to see my kicks peak at around 100, so I just found this one sounds good if I put it in 96 and boost it just a little bit. So that's what I did for the EQ, and then the low cut here, just to cut out some unnecessary stuff since I boosted so low in the channel EQ. Put on a compressor. I honestly just, for everything, because I don't want to get software, just use all the basic stuff that comes in Logic. So I just loaded a compressor, standard compressor. Really didn't change very many of the settings. I brought down the attack a little bit, but you don't want to put that too low, because then you'll start cutting off the front of your kick. Release, I just brought it down a little bit. If you have faster drum beats, which I usually do, you don't want to leave that real long, or it'll sound weird when you're doing kicks quick. Usually ratio around 4 is kind of punchy. Maybe around 3 is for more if you want to do like a push and pull kind of sound, but usually I put it around 4 for kick and snare when I do compression. Didn't change the knee at all. For the threshold, when you do kind of a high ratio like 4, you're not going to want to have the compressor threshold really low, so I brought it up to 8, and I thought it sounded good there. Didn't do anything to the gain. I usually just do that in the track volume. So I solo this. So you see the compressor does make a lot of difference there. I added an enveloper. So for a lot of people who use Logic, you have probably been looking for a transient designer, and I actually did not know until recently that they have the thing called the enveloper, which is kind of like a transient designer. It is a transient designer, at least as far as I understand transient designers. And usually just on kicks and snares now, I boost the gain a little bit. So I just upped that 22%. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that difference. You might not have heard that, but it's there. Just gives it a little bit more punch, which is always good for your kick. Honestly, I didn't change any of these settings. I just loaded it up and then moved the gain up because this time here is already set to 20 milliseconds, which is right at the beginning. You can move this around, but I just like to leave it at 20, and you can also do things with release. So that's another thing. If you are looking for Transient Designer, don't spend all your money on the SPL SLP thing that everyone uses, because it works pretty well, I think. Then I put just a little bit of reverb, probably not noticeable actually. Leave that about there. And then it's really all of the kind of small changes that make the difference. I think the compressor is the only thing that you can really hear a change when you bypass it. Maybe the channel EQ you'll hear. I think you can really hear the low end if you're using good monitors or headphones or whatever. You can hear the low end is a lot stronger when you boost this EQ just a little bit. If I bypass this, you can hear that, I think. So that's really all I do for drums. It's just about finding good samples. I mean, for kick and snare, a lot of people do layering, and I do layering more so on the snare than the kick. You can layer kicks, but that's what I did also. I usually take kind of like a solid kick sample like that, and then you can just put really quiet an acoustic kick sample on top, and I think it makes it sound a little bit bigger. I didn't process this, but you can do the same kind of thing to it if you want. It's pretty quiet, and then if I just add that in there. So you can barely hear that difference, and I've seen other people say that as well, that when you add in a kind of acoustic kick element, it makes it sound a lot bigger, and I agree with them on that. So I generally do that as well as this kind of processing, and I think that's really all I do with my kicks. And just a different kind of tip: when you are making a song, start out with the drums, and then when you put the kick and snare, which are probably going to be some of the loudest elements in the mix, if you leave the kick and snare down at like -10 when you start, you're going to build everything else around that, and then that means you're going to have a ton of headroom at the end when you're doing mastering and things like that. Admittedly, I'm horrible at mastering, but I usually do have a lot of headroom left over in the end of my mixes, because I do start out with drums around like -10 kick and snare, and then I try to work with that. So that's all the processing I do for kicks, and I hope you learned something. If you have a suggestion for a tutorial, I'm probably going to keep doing these because I like to, I suppose, and I guess you guys like it. So if you have any other ideas, or you want me to go over certain synths or whatever else you want to know, just let me know and I'll probably do it. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.